Inside the world's most secure prison, what inmates really eat. The sun burns over the barren Colorado desert, turning miles of rocky terrain into a harsh, unforgiving landscape. Wind sweeps across empty plains, carrying nothing but silence. In this desolate place stands a fortress of steel and concrete. ADX Florence, America's most secure prison. Behind its walls, ordinary life has no place. No crowds, no laughter, no casual conversation. Every step, every sound, every moment is controlled. And yet, amid this extreme isolation, one question quietly looms over the lives of the inmates. What do they eat? Food, something most people take for granted, here becomes a symbol of power, control, and routine. It is delivered through a narrow slot in a steel door, seconds to enter, seconds to leave. There is no cafeteria, no shared tables, no chatter over meals. One tray, one inmate, one solitary cell. Yet, each meal represents far more than nutrition. It is a marker of time, a psychological anchor in a world designed to strip away freedom. It is one of the few ways inmates still interact with the outside world. And even that interaction is measured, monitored, and precise. Inside ADX Florence, meals are standardized, controlled down to the calorie, ingredient, and utensil. Metal cutlery is restricted. Trays arrive at exact times. Religious, medical, and disciplinary diets are regulated to the letter. What might seem mundane, beans, eggs, potatoes, a fruit, a beverage, transforms into a daily test of patience, obedience, and mental endurance. Even the smallest delay, a missing ingredient, or a skipped meal can reverberate in a mind kept in near total isolation, proving that food here is far more than sustenance. It is control, routine, and, in some cases, one of the last remaining threads of humanity. Tonight, we venture inside these walls. We reveal the trays, the rules, the routines, and the psychological weight of each solitary meal. This is a story not just about what inmates eat, but what their food says about life, survival, and order inside the most secure prison on earth. The silence is deafening. The control is absolute. And the food is the final structure in a world built to erase freedom. The Colorado desert stretches endlessly, a barren wasteland where heat scorches the rocks by day and cold pierces to the bone by night. In this emptiness sits a fortress of steel and concrete. ADX Florence, the United States' most secure prison. From the outside, it is intimidating but still abstract, a distant place most will never see. Inside, it is a world meticulously engineered to contain the most dangerous people in the country. Terrorists, gang leaders, violent recidivists, and anyone deemed too unpredictable for a standard prison all end up here. But ADX Florence was not built merely to hold criminals. It was built to eliminate unpredictability entirely. Walk its corridors, and you feel the weight of control. Doors clank with mechanical precision. Cameras follow every movement. Guards patrol with the careful rhythm of a machine, eyes scanning shadows for the slightest anomaly. Inmates live under a clockwork system that leaves no room for improvisation. Every motion, every sound, every choice is accounted for. In this world, the cost of misstep is immediate and often invisible to the outside observer. The story of ADX Florence begins in the late 20th century, a period when the federal prison system faced escalating violence. Correctional officers were attacked. Inmates killed one another. Riots broke out. Ordinary high-security prisons were proving insufficient to contain individuals who were not just dangerous. They were highly organized, hyperviolent, and capable of influencing others from inside their cells. The Bureau of Prisons faced a dilemma. How do you house a person who cannot safely interact with anyone else, not even other inmates? The answer was radical. Isolation on a near-total scale, where every variable is controlled and every action is predictable. ADX Florence opened in 1994, a fortress designed for containment above all else. Cells are small, 7 by 12 feet of reinforced concrete. Inmates spend approximately 23 hours a day alone. The remaining hour is limited to an enclosed outdoor cage, often compared in size to a single tennis court. There is no communal dining, no group work, no shared experiences. Contact is reduced to the bare minimum: meals, brief medical checks, and monitored recreation. The world outside is almost completely removed, leaving inmates in a near-constant state of sensory monotony. But it's not just the physical confinement that makes ADX Florence unique. It's the psychological consequences of that confinement. Years in isolation can warp perception, heighten anxiety, and break down social instincts. Time itself begins to lose meaning. In a typical prison, routine, conversation, and social interaction provide anchors in the day. In ADX Florence, those anchors are gone. Food, sleep, and rare glimpses of the sky become the markers of time. Every tray delivered through the steel slot, every measured step taken to the small outdoor cage, every sound of metal echoing down a corridor becomes amplified, significant, unavoidable. The philosophy behind ADX Florence is simple and brutal. Remove opportunities. Do not just react to danger. Violence, manipulation, and influence must be preemptively eliminated. No movement goes unsupervised. No gathering goes unchecked. By the time an inmate steps into this world, freedom is already gone. Every choice is predetermined. Every meal, every shower, every moment of human contact is scheduled, predictable, and controlled. In essence, ADX Florence is a machine for containment, a place where the physical walls are only part of the barrier. The psychological walls, the careful structuring of time and routine, and the meticulous control over even the smallest human need are what make this prison uniquely effective. It is a world where a single tray of food can become a symbol of order, a reminder that life continues even under absolute control. For the inmates who live here, consequences are immediate, personal, and relentless. A misstep in behavior, a breach of rules, a momentary lapse in compliance, all carry ramifications that ripple through their daily lives. ADX Florence exists not just as a building of concrete and steel, but as a system of absolute containment, where unpredictability is the enemy and control is the law. The first meal in ADX Florence is unlike anything most people have ever experienced. For new inmates, it is a moment of stark realization, a confrontation with isolation itself. After processing through security checkpoints, enduring searches, and stepping into a cell smaller than most bedrooms, they face their first tray. It is not a meal shared, not a moment of social interaction, not a brief reprieve from the monotony of daily life. It is a symbol of total control, delivered silently through a narrow slot in the steel door. The tray slides through the opening with a faint metallic scrape, settling on the ledge inside the cell. The sound is small, almost insignificant to an outsider, but in the near-complete silence of the cell, it resonates like a bell. The inmate is alone. There is no conversation, no laughter, no acknowledgement. Just a tray of food, precise and measured, and a reality that begins to sink in. This is life now. The walls, the concrete, the locked door, the distant hum of fluorescent lights. Everything is fixed. Nothing moves except what the prison allows. Inside this small cell, time becomes immediate and relentless. The first bite of food is not taken casually. Every sensation is amplified. The texture of the bread, the temperature of the beans, the weight of the spoon in hand. Even flavors, normally comforting, feel muted against the backdrop of silence. Chewing becomes a ritual, an attempt to impose control over the self when the world outside is stripped of it. The first tray is a test, not of appetite, but of mental endurance. For many, it is the first true measure of the psychological reality of ADX Florence. Isolation transforms the act of eating into something deeply introspective. Former inmates describe the first meal as a moment of disorientation. Without interaction, without cues from other humans, minutes stretch, and the mind begins to wander into memories of normal life. shared breakfasts, conversation over coffee, the smell of home-cooked meals. Each bite is accompanied by a subtle tension, a recognition that these familiar rituals no longer exist. The body still requires sustenance, but the mind grapples with confinement, repetition, and sensory deprivation. The psychological shift begins quietly but profoundly. Routine, once mundane, becomes the only anchor. The tray, arriving on schedule, provides structure in a world where nearly everything else is removed. In this environment, food is no longer merely nutrition. It is a marker of time, a signal of continuity, a faint tether to humanity. The predictability of the meal paradoxically highlights the unpredictability stripped from every other aspect of life: freedom, choice, companionship. Even the utensils reflect control. A plastic spork, carefully monitored, becomes a symbol of restriction. Metal cutlery is rare, reserved for those deemed low risk, and every tool is accounted for. The tray is designed to meet nutritional needs, but not to comfort. Luxury, choice, and variation are eliminated. The inmate eats alone, under constant surveillance, with the knowledge that the slot will soon close and the tray will disappear, leaving silence in its wake. And yet, within this extreme confinement, small psychological shifts occur. Inmates begin to internalize the rhythm of meals. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, each becomes a landmark in the day. The mind clings to these moments, counting days, memorizing menus, attaching meaning to repetition. What begins as a moment of despair slowly transforms into a coping mechanism. Food, though ordinary in any other life, becomes a lifeline, a structure that allows the mind to survive when nearly all else has been removed. The first meal, in total isolation, is unforgettable. It is a quiet awakening, a confrontation with the absolute control of ADX Florence. The walls do not speak. The guards do not explain. And the world outside has vanished. What remains is the tray, the silence, and the beginning of a profound psychological shift, the first step into the daily life of the world's most secure prison. Inside ADX Florence, every tray tells a story, not of flavor, indulgence, or comfort, but of control, routine, and the precise rhythm of prison life. Breakfast arrives first, always at the same hour. The clatter of the tray through the steel slot echoes faintly in the otherwise silent corridor. Eggs, a starch, a fruit, and a beverage. Nothing extravagant, nothing personal. It is functional, carefully portioned to meet federal nutritional standards. Yet for the inmate, this tray is far more than breakfast. It is the first reminder that life continues, even in a world where nearly everything else is removed. Lunch is similar, though slightly more substantial. Perhaps beans, chicken, or a processed protein, accompanied by rice or potatoes, a vegetable, and a beverage. The variation is minimal, measured, and rotating on a standardized schedule. Menus change by day, but not by taste or preference, only by what the system allows. There is no unpredictability beyond the rotation of staples. Even the beverages, milk or powder drink, are calculated to provide hydration and nutrition without excess. Each item is intentional. Every calorie, every bite, is monitored. Dinner arrives like clockwork, signaling the final meal of the day. By now, the silence of the cell is thick, almost tangible. The act of eating alone becomes more pronounced, more ritualistic. Forks scrape against trays. Liquids slosh in cups. Every motion is amplified by the absence of any human noise or interaction. Repetition sets in quickly. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, the same cycle day after day. The body adjusts to the schedule, but the mind begins to feel the monotony. Some inmates describe counting the weeks by menu rotations, remembering the day not by the calendar, but by the protein on their tray. Predictability, however, is precisely the point. In a prison designed to remove influence and prevent chaos, food becomes a tool of order. If every inmate receives the same meal at the same time, delivered in the same manner, there is little opportunity for conflict. Arguments over portions, complaints about favoritism, or attempts to manipulate the system are minimized. Meals are not meant to comfort, but to maintain control, both over the inmate's body and their perception of time. In this way, the trays themselves enforce the philosophy of ADX Florence: remove uncertainty, eliminate leverage, and impose structure. The repetition is relentless. Week after week, month after month, the meals follow the same pattern. Even the smallest deviations, a swapped protein, a missing fruit, becomes significant. Inmates, accustomed to exact predictability, notice each difference, interpreting it as a signal from the institution. The system conditions them to rely on routine, to expect order, and to understand that the rules extend even to something as simple as a tray of beans or a slice of bread. Yet within this monotony, subtle psychological effects emerge. The brain begins to anchor to the meals as temporal markers, using the repetition as a measure of days and weeks. The predictability, while controlling, also provides a thread of continuity. Food becomes a quiet rhythm in an otherwise static world. For inmates, it is simultaneously a symbol of confinement and a lifeline, the one part of the day that arrives with absolute certainty, offering structure in a life stripped of choice. Every tray, every bite, every repetition reinforces a simple truth. Inside ADX Florence, control is absolute, and predictability is power. The meals are mundane, but their impact is profound. They dictate the pace of life, the perception of time, and even the psychological endurance of those who inhabit the prison. In this environment, food is more than sustenance. It is a tool, a marker, and a measure of the machine that surrounds every inmate, day after day, meal after meal. In ADX Florence, meals are more than sustenance. They're the rhythm of life, the invisible clock that measures every day inside the prison. With 23 hours spent alone in a cell, the mind seeks markers of time, anchors in a world stripped of social cues. Meal rotation becomes the calendar. Breakfast signals the start of day, lunch the midpoint, and dinner the close. The menus rotate with precise regularity, day after day, week after week. Inmates track these cycles like prisoners of habit, noting which protein appears on Monday, which starch accompanies Wednesday lunch, and which fruit completes the rotation on Thursday. Each tray is a reminder that, even here, time continues, even if all other freedoms are stripped away. The system's predictability is deliberate. By anchoring days to meals, ADX Florence creates a controlled perception of time. When an inmate knows what is coming next, the prison reinforces order. The mind adapts to this rhythm, internalizing the repetition as a form of structure. Yet structure in isolation is double-edged. It offers security and predictability, but it also sharpens awareness of confinement. Each tray is a reminder that choice has vanished. Every predictable rotation highlights the absence of spontaneity, human interaction, or comfort. Disruptions to this routine, even minor ones, carry psychological weight. A delayed tray or a temporary shortage becomes more than inconvenience. It is a subtle, inescapable punishment. Time itself stretches when meals do not arrive as scheduled. Hunger, combined with uncertainty, intensifies the sense of control exerted over the inmate's life. Former inmates describe the anxiety that comes with unexpected delays, counting seconds, imagining the reasons, feeling the absence of normalcy press against the mind. Even when nutrition remains adequate, the disruption reinforces the institution's authority. Compliance is intertwined with the meals themselves. Special diets, whether medical, religious, or disciplinary, are tightly regulated, and acceptance requires adherence to rules. A misstep can affect not only the next tray, but future access to accommodations. Food becomes both a reward and a measure of obedience, a reflection of the inmate's ability to navigate a system designed to minimize personal agency. Every bite is controlled, every portion calculated, every tray delivered with meticulous oversight. The act of eating, mundane in most lives, becomes a subtle interaction between the individual and the institution, a constant negotiation of compliance under surveillance. This connection between time and food goes deeper than routine. Inmates recount using meals to track weeks, even months. The presence of a familiar protein or vegetable signals continuity in an otherwise unchanging life. Conversely, changes in the rotation or delayed trays are memorably jarring, creating tension that can echo for hours. The psychological effect of these small manipulations is cumulative. The mind becomes attuned to minute details, hyper-aware of control, and conditioned to the rhythms imposed by the institution. Food, in this way, is a lens through which the larger philosophy of ADX Florence becomes clear. The prison does not merely restrict movement. It orchestrates the flow of time. Predictable meals anchor the day, while deviations subtly reinforce authority. Meal rotation becomes the calendar, delays become psychological punishment, and every tray reminds the inmate that freedom has been replaced with order. In a world designed to erase autonomy, the rhythm of food is both a lifeline and a leash, marking the passage of time while underscoring the reach of the system. In this silent, controlled environment, the simplest acts, lifting a spoon, sipping a beverage, finishing a tray, become profound exercises in endurance and compliance. Time is structured, life is regimented, and every meal is a quiet assertion of control. Here, food is not comfort. It is time made tangible, obedience made visible, and the unyielding machinery of a prison designed to dominate every hour of every day. Even in a place built to erase freedom, some rights remain. Inmates at ADX Florence are still entitled to constitutional protections, including access to medical care and reasonable accommodation for religious practices. But in this extreme environment, rights exist as mechanical processes stripped of warmth, choice, or flexibility. They are acknowledged, documented, and tightly regulated. Yet every aspect is filtered through the lens of security and control. Religious diets are the clearest example. Kosher meals, halal meals, vegetarian options, or fasting accommodations are permitted under federal law, but only through formal requests and verification. Approval requires compliance with bureaucratic procedures, forms, signatures, verification of affiliation, and ongoing oversight. Once granted, these meals are not negotiable or flexible. They are delivered exactly as prescribed, pre-packaged to reduce contamination or misuse, and tracked meticulously. The system ensures that religion can be practiced, but only in a highly regimented, depersonalized form. Any deviation, such as trading food or refusing it repeatedly, can result in revocation. Faith becomes a process, not a choice, a series of checkboxes, not an act of devotion. Medical diets follow a similar pattern. Inmates with diabetes, high blood pressure, allergies, or gastrointestinal conditions receive adjusted meals, reduced sugar, controlled sodium, or modified textures. Nutrition is maintained, but taste and comfort are secondary. Refusal of a medically prescribed diet is documented, monitored, and can result in a return to the standard tray unless a life-threatening condition arises. The goal is preservation of health, not indulgence. Every bite is accounted for, every adaptation scrutinized, and every action logged. Even when rights are exercised, the environment reduces them to mechanical compliance. There is no warmth in the meal, no conversation to accompany religious reflection, no shared table to express community. The practice of rights is isolated, silent, and often invisible. An inmate may receive a kosher lunch or a sugar-controlled dinner, but the experience is mediated entirely by procedure. It is legal compliance, not choice, structure imposed from above rather than expression from within. This mechanical approach extends to disciplinary and administrative modifications as well. Temporary changes to diet for security reasons, loss of commissary privileges, restricted items, or heightened monitoring are implemented swiftly and without negotiation. Nutrition is maintained, but autonomy is absent. Every variation reinforces the authority of the institution, compliance is required, deviations are tracked, and meals themselves become a tool for control. Even within these constraints, the human mind finds meaning. Inmates learn to navigate the rules, anticipate rotations, and interpret the rhythms of trays, utensils, and timing. But every act of agency exists within a rigid framework. Rights are not freedoms here. They are permissions, proceduralized and conditional. The larger lesson of ADX Florence is clear. Constitutional protections survive, but only as instruments of order. Religion, medical need, and legal accommodation persist, yet they operate in a space defined entirely by the system. There is no improvisation, no personalization, no comfort beyond the minimal nutritional and legal standards. The act of eating, whether for faith, health, or routine, is a negotiation between the human need for autonomy and the unyielding machinery of confinement. In this environment, meals reflect the paradox of ADX Florence. Rights exist, but they are mechanical. Choice exists, but it is conditional. Humanity exists, but only within rules, procedures, and surveillance. Even acts meant to express individuality, a prayer, a dietary request, a medical necessity, are absorbed into the system's rigid schedule, a testament to the totality of control. Every tray, every bite, every rotation reinforces the central truth. Inside the world's most secure prison, freedom is measured in milliseconds, and rights operate only within the invisible gears of a meticulously controlled machine. Few items in American prison culture spark as much debate and misconception as Nutriloaf. Media portrayals, internet forums, and anecdotal accounts often depict it as a punitive, tasteless food punishment, a symbol of cruelty. But the reality, particularly inside ADX Florence, is far more measured and far more nuanced. Understanding Nutriloaf requires separating myth from documented practice, examining policy, oversight, and the purpose behind its design. Nutriloaf, sometimes referred to simply as the loaf, is a dense, compact block of nutrition. It typically combines grains, vegetables, and a protein source, baked into a uniform, manageable shape. Its primary goal is functional, to meet all caloric and nutritional requirements while minimizing risk. Unlike a traditional meal, utensils may be unnecessary, which reduces the chance of misuse, weaponization, or contraband. The design is deliberate and procedural, not arbitrary. Public perception often exaggerates its prevalence. Court records, Bureau of Prisons documentation, and investigative reporting indicate that Nutriloaf is not a standard meal at ADX Florence. It is historically associated with short-term disciplinary measures in certain federal and state correctional systems. Its use is exceptional, not routine, and is typically triggered by safety concerns, such as an inmate misusing utensils, contaminating meals, or creating hazards in the kitchen. Even in these cases, its deployment is highly regulated. In practice, Nutriloaf is a temporary solution. The Bureau of Prisons requires that any modification to an inmate's diet for disciplinary purposes undergo medical oversight and legal review. Prolonged or punitive deprivation is strictly prohibited. Documentation ensures that every use is accountable, with clear start and end dates, health monitoring, and administrative justification. The goal is risk mitigation, not punishment for punishment's sake. Reports that Nutriloaf is used systematically at ADX Florence are largely unverified. Lawsuits referencing nutritionally complete food loaves often involve other federal facilities or earlier historical periods. Contemporary, verified public records do not support routine or indiscriminate use at ADX. Instead, the prison relies primarily on standard federal meal rotations for nearly all inmates, including those in the most restrictive housing units. Nutriloaf, if ever used, is part of a short-term, controlled, and documented intervention. This distinction is critical. Myth portrays Nutriloaf as a symbol of deprivation, cruelty, or neglect. The reality is administrative, measured, and procedural. It is a tool within a system designed to maintain security, prevent harm, and ensure nutritional sufficiency under extreme confinement. Its design and deployment reflect the broader philosophy of ADX Florence: total control, risk reduction, and meticulous accountability. Even in isolation, every aspect of food service is monitored. Meals, rotations, and occasional disciplinary modifications are documented meticulously, reviewed for compliance with legal, medical, and constitutional standards. The presence of Nutriloaf does not signal punishment without oversight. It signals a carefully managed intervention aimed at safety and procedural integrity. In essence, Nutriloaf is a mirror of ADX Florence itself. Misunderstood from the outside, carefully controlled inside, and bound by policy and oversight. Its myth has grown in popular imagination, but the facts tell a different story. It is rare, regulated, and designed for safety, not cruelty. Understanding this helps contextualize life inside the nation's most secure prison, where even the food that sustains inmates reflects the balance between human need and institutional control. The meals arriving at ADX Florence are deceptively simple. A tray of eggs, beans, rice, or chicken may appear mundane, but the journey from kitchen to cell is anything but ordinary. Behind the steel doors of the prison kitchen lies a system meticulously designed not for culinary creativity, but for logistical precision and security enforcement. Every ingredient, every utensil, every tray is accounted for, tracked, and monitored, a process where operational efficiency doubles as a security measure. Unlike lower security prisons, where inmates may work alongside staff in food preparation, ADX Florence limits inmate participation drastically. Only those with the lowest internal risk classification may assist in limited, closely supervised roles. Most meals are prepared, portioned, and sometimes pre-cooked in centralized federal food systems before arriving at the supermax. This practice minimizes opportunities for weaponization of kitchen tools, sabotage of meals, or introduction of contraband. In the world of ADX, efficiency is inseparable from safety. Each kitchen tool is assigned, tracked, and often restricted. Knives, metal utensils, and sharp implements are used sparingly, under direct supervision, or replaced with plastic alternatives. Even the simplest items, like mixing spoons or tongs, pass through a chain of accountability designed to prevent misuse. Staff training emphasizes not only food safety, but also the potential security implications of every movement. In a prison built to neutralize threats before they occur, nothing is left to chance. Meal assembly is a precise operation. Portions are measured to exact specifications, calories are calculated, and trays are built uniformly to maintain consistency. This standardization ensures nutritional compliance while eliminating opportunities for disputes or perceived favoritism. Each tray is logged, sealed, and placed on locked food carts. These carts travel along predetermined routes, handled only by designated staff, with no point left unattended. By the time the tray slides through the cell slot, it has passed through layers of accountability, verification, and documentation. The process is as much about logistics as it is about food. Each movement is a security checkpoint, every delay or error logged. The kitchen's design reinforces predictability. Ingredients arrive on schedule, meals are assembled on strict timetables, and delivery windows are tightly controlled. Communal cooking or improvisation is absent, both potential risks in a facility where even small deviations could escalate into incidents. In this environment, routine is not monotonous. It is a defensive strategy. The kitchen operates less like a culinary space and more like a military logistics hub. Every motion, from chopping vegetables to sliding a tray through a steel slot, is measured, deliberate, and documented. Even sanitation and food safety serve dual purposes. Temperature checks, hygiene inspections, and staff training meet federal standards while simultaneously reinforcing operational discipline. Contamination, accidents, or procedural lapses are not only health hazards, but also security vulnerabilities. The kitchen becomes a microcosm of the supermax itself, a tightly controlled environment where every action is monitored, every risk anticipated, and every deviation minimized. The result is deceptively simple. Meals arrive intact, safe, and predictable. But beneath the surface, the kitchen is a weaponized logistical system designed to neutralize human error, minimize threats, and enforce the broader philosophy of ADX Florence. Every tray embodies control, every route reduces unpredictability, and every oversight mechanism turns food into both sustenance and security. In a facility built to strip autonomy, the kitchen quietly wields power. The act of feeding inmates is no longer just nutrition. It is order delivered on a tray, precision enforced through procedure, and security realized through logistics. Behind the kitchen doors, the machinery of control hums in silence, and the ordinary act of preparing a meal becomes a central pillar of the prison strategy. Every bite accounted for, every tray a tool of surveillance, and every meal a measure of the system's reach. In ADX Florence, almost every aspect of life is dictated by the institution. Movement, communication, daily routines, and even light are controlled. Yet, even in this environment of near-total oversight, there remains a rare, solitary act over which an inmate holds complete autonomy: the decision to refuse food. In a place where influence is stripped away, meals delivered through steel slots become not only sustenance, but also the only arena for quiet resistance. Refusing a meal, sometimes called a hunger strike, is not a grand protest in this prison. There are no audiences, no cellmates to witness defiance, no communal spaces where solidarity can form. The act is silent, personal, and psychologically potent. For the inmate, it is a rare moment of agency in a system designed to remove choice. Each skipped tray is a statement, a private assertion that, even here, the individual still retains a fragment of control. Yet this choice is not without consequence. In the highly monitored environment of ADX Florence, meal refusal triggers a series of structured responses. Any missed tray is documented immediately. If refusal continues beyond a single meal, administrative protocols are activated and medical oversight begins. Nurses and doctors monitor hydration, weight, vital signs, and mental state. Every day, without food, is logged. Every physiological change recorded. The goal is clear: preserve life, not punish defiance. Medical staff are trained to respond swiftly. After approximately 72 hours of sustained refusal, a threshold defined in federal procedures, intensive monitoring begins. Health checks increase in frequency, and interventions may include nutritional supplements or hydration to prevent permanent damage. In extreme cases, court authorization may be required for force feeding, a legally contentious practice reserved strictly for life-threatening situations. At every step, the system balances the inmate's right to protest with the institution's responsibility to maintain safety and prevent death. Psychologically, hunger strikes are a double-edged sword. The silence amplifies the inmate's isolation. Depriving oneself of food, the most basic link to survival and routine, sharpens awareness of confinement and reinforces the omnipresence of institutional control. Even as the strike is a personal act of defiance, the environment neutralizes its visibility. There are no crowds to cheer, no media to amplify the protest. The rebellion is internal, silent, and contained, a subtle echo of agency in an otherwise totalitarian structure. Administrators view hunger strikes as both risk and signal. Each strike is meticulously documented, reviewed, and interpreted. It signals an inmate's discontent, tests medical limits, and challenges the procedures governing control. Yet the prison's response is procedural, predictable, and deliberate, reflecting the broader philosophy of ADX Florence. Autonomy exists only where it does not threaten order. The system is engineered to absorb acts of resistance without collapse, converting even defiance into a measured interaction with oversight, documentation, and care. In this environment, the significance of food becomes strikingly apparent. Meals delivered on schedule represent order, safety, and compliance. Food refused becomes the last frontier of personal decision-making. It is one of the few actions where the individual can assert control, even as the institution prepares to respond. Hunger strikes are quiet, isolated, and heavily monitored, yet they reveal a paradox at the heart of ADX Florence. Even in a prison built to remove freedom, the most basic act, choosing what or whether to eat, remains an inescapable assertion of human will. The hunger strike is not just physical. It is psychological, administrative, and legal. It underscores the delicate balance between control and autonomy, health and rebellion, silence and statement. In ADX Florence, food is the system, and refusing it is one of the very few ways inmates can quietly reclaim a fragment of themselves. Every tray ignored, every meal refused, becomes an unspoken negotiation, the last choice in a place designed to leave no choice at all. Inside ADX Florence, food is more than sustenance. It is a clock, a calendar, a barometer of control. Every tray, every measured portion, every prepackaged meal is a reflection of a system designed to eliminate unpredictability. Inmates spend decades in cells no larger than a bedroom, where the rhythm of life is dictated by steel, concrete, and the silent slide of a tray through a slot. There is no community, no shared laughter over dinner, no comfort in routine beyond the mechanical certainty that food will arrive and be removed again. We have followed the first tray, the first silence, the first psychological shift. We have seen menus rotate like calendars, meals measured like time itself, and special diets reduced to procedural compliance. We have separated myth from reality, explored the controversial Nutriloaf, and stepped behind the kitchen doors, where logistics are weaponized and every movement is a checkpoint. We have witnessed hunger strikes, quiet acts of rebellion where the most basic autonomy clashes with the system's unyielding oversight. ADX Florence is a laboratory of control. It teaches that when every choice is restricted, even the smallest act, taking a bite, refusing one, or following a prescribed diet, becomes monumental. Food reveals the invisible structures of authority, the daily assertion of power, and the fragile persistence of human will. It shows that even in a place designed to strip identity, routine, and freedom, life persists, measured in calories, rotations, and silent resistance. The meals themselves are unremarkable, but the context makes them extraordinary. They are instruments of order, symbols of compliance, and markers of time in a world where time itself is confined. Every tray delivered, every bite consumed, every refusal documented tells a story of a system that observes, measures, and controls, and the human spirit that persists quietly within its walls. This is the truth of ADX Florence, a prison where food is not comfort, not indulgence, not community. It is structure. It is control. It is proof that life, even in its smallest acts, continues under watchful eyes. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.